And thank you, Robin, because it's funny, I hadn't heard much about um, these kind of sound levels other than, I don't know, just regular software and editing. And well, I know that Joseph has talked about it in some of these roundtables, though I didn't realize that it was the standard for NPR and Democracy Now, and that it kind of creates this I don't know if controversy is the right word, but kind of an imbalance of like, it's the
just
people.
total anarchy, I'm sorry to say.
Right, because if you do it like NPR, all their programs are like the standard, like you said, -24 ULSF.
It's
Is that
LUSF, which is
LUSF?
loudness units
Full scale.
full scale.
Full scale.
That's what it means. And it's
And
very close to what a decibel is, but it's a little different, so
oh, okay. Well, that'll be interesting to hear about too.
yeah.
And then so NPR does their whole programming at that level, and Audioport is kind of a free for all, and except Democracy Now, which also conforms to that
Well,
standard of 24, and then everyone thinks it's too low. So
well, I went through and actually checked the sound levels on a week's shows that we download, and half of them are totally out of whack, basically.
okay.
Only about a third of them are in the -24 range, within 3 decibels of -24. And it's really, the problem is,
Oh, I was just going to go to Joseph real quick right
Okay.
before you go. Did you have something to add, Joseph?
Yes. Many years ago, when we were involved with Content Depot, which is NPR, but it's also other programs, they had gone through and listened to using loudness standard to all the programs, which is why they found out there was so many variables that they went. So it's not just NPR, it's also Content Depot. Everybody has to be negative.
PRX also.
Yes, PRX.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
All of
Okay.
Europe. All of Europe.
Oh,
Yes.
Anyway, I won't
all
say
right.
this is his thing.
Yeah. Well, okay, with that, Robin, take
Okay,
it
well,
away.
let me just get into it a little bit. I grew up playing viola. My mother played cello in the Vassar Symphony Orchestra. My teacher was first viola at the San Francisco Symphony. I grew up appreciating good sound. And I listened to KPFA in Muir Beach in the 1960s, and they had good sound. And, in those days, FM was really just coming into full power, before KPFA and FM stations in the 50s, it was all AM, and sound wasn't very good, actually. But FM, one of the qualities of FM is you can play a symphony with its full dynamic range. And if you have a good stereo system, it's like you're in the concert hall. And so that's the way it was for quite a few years. People listened and bought FM radios and spent thousands of dollars on sound systems to be able to hear beautiful music, And then what happened was cell phones, podcast. And this started in the mid-2000s, and sound quality just degraded like mad. And so now we have basically with Audioport, like I say, complete anarchy. The -24 LUSF, which it's a measurement of not just the individual sound levels. If you have a meter that measures the dBu level of the sound, it's at a particular point in time. LUSF measures it over a 3-second window, and it tries to get the average of the whole segment that is being played, and then qualify that as being a certain sound level. And the standard of -24 came into being in Europe and in television. What was happening was there was these loudness wars between television programs and the commercials. what would happen is you'd be listening to a reasonable television program, and then suddenly the commercial would come on and it was like 4 times louder than everything else. And basically in about 2010, and in Europe about the same time, they instituted these standards, and it said all television has to be minus 24 LUSF. It has to be a standard level of sound so you don't get blasted by these terrible commercials. And NPR, PRX, and most public radio in the United States adopted this standard of minus 24. Now, why do they use minus 24? Again, this goes back to the idea that you want to have the ability to broadcast the full dynamic range of a symphony orchestra, from the very quiet parts of the symphony to the most loud, cymbals and loudness, and have nothing distorted. Well, the problem was with cell phones, iPads, all these new electronic devices brought to us by Steve Jobs and all these big manufacturing companies, they have terrible sound. They cannot produce listenable sound at minus 24 LUSF. And so people started boosting the levels for podcasts, for iTunes, to way louder than that. And the truth of the matter is, it sounds terrible, but people have gotten so used to it. And, Zoom and the pandemic has made people even more used to bad sound, it seems like. So, I think probably when audio parts started in, around 2000, it probably wasn't that much of a problem. People were probably producing mostly close to minus 24. But as soon as people started doing podcasts and bumping up the levels, and another thing that people have to understand, LUSF is measured in decibels. And now decibels, that measurement of sound level is logarithmic. That means every 3 decibels doubles the volume of the sound. Doubles. So when you go from minus 24 to minus 21, and by the way, the minuses, the lower numbers with a minus are louder. Again, I don't know who created this system. It's nutty, basically. It should be positive, but it isn't. So when you boost the level, what the recommended level of podcast should be about minus 16 or minus 18. Well, that's a lot louder than minus 24. So when you download something from AudioPort and you're putting it into your automation program, the sound level is going to jump very much from one segment to another segment. Now, this is fine, maybe, if you have the funds to have a board operator 24/7. Well, how many radio stations do you know now in community radio can pay a board operator 24/7? Most people are using automation programs. They're just putting the programs in there, and the level's jumping all over the place. Now, luckily, in most cases, in the sound setup in a radio station, the signal comes out of your automation program into your console, then it's sent to your transmitter. And somewhere in that process, you have sound processors which will limit and bring down the level of the sound. For example, we have an Orban processor in our Nowtel transmitter up at 11,000 feet where we broadcast from. And that Orban processor can bring down the levels so that the listener doesn't know that the level has jumped, 10 times or whatever. But it's still, when you take something that's really loud and then bring it down with a compressor and a limiter, the quality of the music that you're playing suffers, basically. It just doesn't sound as good. And the problem is, if everybody were only broadcasting at minus 16 or minus 18, putting that on AudioPort, maybe the software and the compressors that are in the transmitter would compensate for it. But the problem is, Some people are putting it up to like -7, -10. It is just blastingly loud. And I have identified the worst offenders. There's two really good programs coming out of Baton Rouge, out of the low power station at Baton Rouge. Beautiful Zydeco music and everything. They're at -7 and -10. And I have to run it through a processor before I even put it into my automation program. Otherwise, it'll sound terrible. And I've told them, why are you doing this? And they just ignore me, basically, unfortunately. And I just don't understand how, again,
Can I stop you there for a moment,
Sure.
Robin? I see Charlie raised his hand for a
Oh.
question.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, decibels are always relative to something. So what would 0 mean in this context? The absolutely strongest possible signal?
0 would be the loudest that your system could absorb before it completely clips, basically. See, if you bring up the levels and you're in an editing software, if you bring it up too much, what happens is the top level will actually be electronically clipped and it really sounds terrible. So zero is, the maximum that your system can accommodate and not completely clip the signal.
And Joseph, you have something to add to that?
Yes, I do. What it is it's the bandwidth. It's the bit bandwidth. So when you're going above 0, you're going into the positive, and that's outside of the bandwidth.
Right.
That's why it clips.
Right.
Well, I guess my reaction is at -24. That's a tremendously low signal level, 24 decibels down from 0. But you're saying that the electronic bandwidth in FM radio, anyway, is that broad. It's electronically able to move over that amplitude range.
Absolutely.
Again, now one of the sites that I'm going to recommend, and this is a great site, it's called transom.org, transom.org. And they have some great audio people. They're oriented toward radio, and they have so many tutorials explaining this in great deep depth, way more than I could explain. And I'm going to show you one of the main ones that they have. Jefftown is one of the ones there.
How do you spell that, Robin?
It's T transom. Let me bring up the
like
window
over the
here.
transom.
Yeah.
What's a transom?
Oh,
the transom is, I don't know why it's called that. It's a little strange to me, but
Is it like Trans Am?
TRA, I'm sorry.
transom.org. And they have one tutorial, and it's called The Audio Producer's Guide to Loudness. And I really recommend that people read through this because it explains in great detail, far more sophisticated ways than I can. But his point that he makes in this tutorial is that if you record on a recorder, and you set your volume on your recording level about in the middle, you're going to be recording about -24. And so if you, on your recorder, tried to get it up to -16, you'd be clipping on the recorder. So you want to bring the sound in from your recorder at -24. Maybe it's going to be a little low, maybe it's going to be a little higher. And then in your editing software, whether you're using Pro Tools or Audio, all the different ones that are out there, many people use very different ones. If you edit at -24, you retain all the dynamic range of whatever you recorded. And you, of course, save your files on the recorder in a WAV file, not an MP3 file that's compressed. You want to have all the information that's there. You want to have good quality sound in your original recording and your original editing. And what Jefftown recommends, and he has another tutorial that's called Podcasting Basis, Loudness for Podcasts versus Radio. And he explains how you can accommodate both things. You should be recording at -24, editing at -24, and then when you output it for radio, you output it at -24, and for a podcast, you output a separate file that's at -16 or -18. There's no reason that you can't have two different files. It takes like about a minute and a half to output the two different versions. It's not like it's hard or anything, but
So you can record it and put it in the editing at -24 and then output it at -16 for the
Right.
podcast. Okay.
right. And there's another great,
Oh, and yes, Joseph.
go ahead.
If I may amplify upon this, if you're recording, using a board or something, and that they don't measure in loudness, they measure in peak. If you keep your peaks around -12, you'll be pretty good. That's pretty much the standard for most of peak meter sound is
Right.
-12.
And, the LUSF standard is not just for this average of -24. It's supposed to be no more than, I think, 2 decibels higher and 2 decibels lower. It actually, they want you to, control it. There's a number of different programs which will analyze the file for you and tell you what it is, what the peak is, what the lowest level is. One of the programs that I use a lot for these audio port programs that are just terrible, it's called Audiophonic, and it basically will take any sound file and average it so that you still have ups and downs, but it gets it to -24 or any other level that you want. It'll make it for podcasting. You can set it at any level, and it averages it out so that the listener on the radio, even if they're driving in their car, has a consistent level of sound that they can hear.
And what is that? How do you spell that, Robin?
That is AUPHONIC leveler. And they have both a web-based version that you can use very inexpensively for a few hours a month if you're just doing one program, or you can purchase a standalone program that will do it. You just pay for it once, and it's very reasonable, and it's a great program. It has made our editing. For example, we record at public meetings, and we have a mic at the podium, and then there'll be people asking questions, and we have another mic with a supercardioid mic that we can pick up a question in the background. Well, we have levels going all over the place. And if we run that recording through Audiophonic, it evens it out so we don't have to go and bring up and bring down and do all this extremely tedious work of getting the recording that we did to sound good. So that's another tool that is very useful. But going back to this thing of the dynamic range, it is just, to me, I just don't understand it. All these people are spending hours producing these amazing programs on AudioPort. I mean, we could not survive without AudioPort. The number of programs that we pick up, the variety, the timeliness of them is just amazing. But then here are these people wrecking their own sound. They've done all this work, and then they don't bother to make it sound good. To me, it just is bizarre. And like I say, if I can show you some files, like I say, at least half of the programs on AudioPort are just totally off the map, including Sprouts.
Oh, shit.
Sprouts is at -15, and it doesn't need
Okay.
to be at -15. The Ukraine program is at, up in that area. Go ahead. They had some.
Joseph,
I was
yeah.
gonna say Ukraine
Oh,
probably is in that category too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
All right.
So I want to, I think you're doing great, Robin, right, Robin?
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to amplify something about so what he's talking about with Audiophonics and other programs is called loudness normalization. I've talked about this before in other things. And there's a difference between that and peak normalization. In loudness normalization, when it raises the levels for the entire file from, say, X to X, like from -24 to -26, it doesn't, peak normalization stops at the highest peak. Loudness normalization does not. So a good loudness normalizer has a limiter built in.
Right.
And so what happens is when you raise it to -16 or -13, which is YouTube's standard, it basically pushes all the top waves down. So it makes everything sound all loud.
Right.
Compressed is the term. So all the lowest are the same as the highest. And that's the problem is with the -24 with the full range, you lose that range as you move it higher in your normalization. And as I'm sure he'll show when he shows the various, are you going to show some examples?
Well, I'm trying to see how I can get up these tabs from the
Okay.
from Transom. How do I do that?
Basically,
You can share your screen.
Where do I do that? I'm
There's
zooming.
button on
there's
the
yeah.
Okay, well, let's see. Where does it go? Oh, let's see. Here we go.
anyway, it turns it into basically like
here
you
it
got
is.
a crew cut.
Okay.
When we used to have hair.
Okay, I'm just having trouble finding this here. Let's see, desktop one. Yeah, I'm not. I'm Zoom phobic. Let's see if I hold shift. I'm trying to bring up Chrome, but
You kind of have to have whatever tab you want keyed up ahead of time.
well, I do, but it's
Okay.
not bringing it up for some reason.
So did you hit share?
I did, and it's
And it should give you a box with options in it, and it should be one of those.
One of them should be
Yeah.
share screen.
yeah, well, that's what I did, but it's not. It's making me go to system preferences. Oh,
Yes,
good
hello.
grief. Okay,
Oh,
there.
have
let's
you ever
see.
shared screen before?
Ooh.
Oh, it says it won't let me do it until I.
Yeah,
So I
if you have a
quit.
Mac and you've not shared in Zoom.
Well, I thought I had, but anyway, well, I'm not gonna. It's all right. I'm not gonna share the screen. It's all right. I think we can explain what's involved. Again, there's so many different aspects of making good recordings, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit too. It's not just getting the levels right. For example, I see people, and I don't know if you can see me. If you can put me up, my view up, Stephanie.
Want me to focus on you?
Yeah,
Okay. Gotcha.
it's not showing up here, but I wanted to show a recorder here, but it's not showing me.
Oh, are you trying to do the share screen again? Or are you doing something
No, I'm
else?
just my camera, basically. It's not.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I'm seeing you, but I'm not seeing me. Well, anyway,
Robin, did you click up on the upper right corner that says view
okay,
and click on speaker?
okay.
Then you should come up as big when you talk.
Well, it's not doing it for some reason. There we go. Okay. What I was trying to do is show a recorder, but it's not really showing. This is a typical Tascam recorder. I don't know if you can see it, but it has built-in microphones, and I see people from competing radio stations will say, using this to record a meeting. And they're in the back of the room holding this recorder, and they're recording the meeting. And their sound is terrible. You can't do that. You've got to have a mic at the podium. You've got to have a boom mic or a supercardioid mic pointed at other speakers that are speaking, or you've got to have individual mics. You can't depend on a Omni mic to record a whole bunch of other people. You'll get bad sound. And you know, you want a windscreen on your microphone, you want a pop filter on your microphone. There's just so many things that people can do to improve their sound besides just the level, you know. And yet I'm shocked. Some pretty big stations don't seem to know that. I mean, I see them recording in meetings and they're not getting good sound. They can't possibly be getting good sound. And again, I think, you know, it behooves Pacifica to make our sound as good as possible. Again, so many people don't know how important the Pacifica affiliate network is. It's the largest progressive radio network in the country, maybe even in the world. And yet, so some of the people that are posting things are being so sloppy. They're producing good programs, but they're sloppy on these different aspects. I mean, for example, the nuclear program just posted last night, 11 minutes of dead air at the end of her program. Why? How could you possibly do that? KPFA, 2 days ago, posted an entire program with no audio, just completely silent, the whole program. And the address that they had for me to inform them in audio port, it wasn't any valid anymore. I couldn't even contact them to tell them that they had a completely silent program that they had posted from KPFA. To me, this is just unnecessary. You know, people should take care on these things, you know. And
what was the program, Robin?
It's my brain's going blank here. It's the 6 o'clock on KPFA, Dennis Bernstein's program, you know, and it's a good program. You know, KPFA has been producing some great programs about Gaza. You know, I mean, really, Letters in Politics, amazingly detailed programs. Well, you know, if they post an audio port a program that's just silent, that's crazy.
Thoughts on that, Joseph?
So back when they before they changed the Content Depot stuff, they did the sound levels. They did a study and with people and how much loud changes before people turn off the radio. If there's a 5% change in loudness, people will reach over and turn it down. If it's a 10% change of loudness, people will turn it off or turn it to another station.
Yeah.
That's why Content Depot and NPR went to this, because people were going, ah. Well, you know, if you play a quiet rock song and then you go into a loud rock song, you know, the difference. People are going to go, ah.
Well, I mean, NPR is another big example. Do you know that almost no NPR programs are edited by the affiliate stations? I mean, they'll have a producer produce a program. They have to submit a narrative, the sound, and NPR edits that. They don't let any of the affiliate stations do the editing. I mean, I've been to workshops at the National Federation of Community Broadcasters. They don't, because they don't trust them. And of course, everything on NPR sounds exactly the same. That's a negative aspect of it, but their quality is very, very even as a result, you know, and there's no reason why our producers can't at least come close to that. You know, it really doesn't make sense to me. So
I would like to show an example of something, if I may.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
You know how to do it. I can't do it.
Go for it.
Thank you. And let me find, oh, there it is right here. Let me pull it up. Let me share my screen. Where are you? I know it. There we go.
There it goes. Yeah. Okay.
And then, okay, so this is today's Gadget Talks. And I use negative 21, not negative 24, but it doesn't matter.
Oh, that's fine.
And so these, let's see. I'm sorry. Okay. So these two programs here, one is the this is the Washington News Service that comes out of the newsservice.org. And this is the daily oh gad, brain's not working here. Sorry, I'm there we go. Sorry. Oh, this is the 2023 talks.
Okay.
So I'll go back to, so in Reaper, for instance, I can do loudness normalization. And so like I said, I shoot for negative 21 for everything. And so those two programs I do normalize. And if you'll see, it's reduced by a little bit.
Yeah.
So negative 2, almost negative 3, and negative 0.62, which is not that much. But, you know, the 3 decibels, in other words, has been reduced by quite a lot. That's so that I can get everything at negative 21. The Washington News Service has always been loud, has always, if you look closer, you'll see that they compress the heck out of it, and then they make it louder to a specific level. I don't know why. And so that's what I have to do when I have programs that I don't control, like the news and the Skagit Talks interview and such like that. And so I will stop sharing now.
Oh, that's very helpful. Yeah.
Anyway, there you go.
But again, I would really encourage people to go to transom.org and look at these tutorials. They're very well written. In fact, Jeff Town did a whole program for PRX on recording in sound about 6 months ago. I tried to find it, but I couldn't. I heard it when I was in the Bay Area. I just actually heard it, you know, on one of the NPR stations. It was very well done. And they review all different recording devices, editing devices. It's a very, very helpful site for anyone that wants to get their quality good. And again, we've done over 4,000 programs in the last 20 years, and we have worked with every imaginable sound situation. And we've learned how to make things sound good. It takes work. Unfortunately, public bodies don't do a very good job. We record at our county commission and the sound is terrible. We record, you know, there's terrible acoustics in lots of places. You know, the bad acoustics in public buildings is frightening. And in public schools, sound levels are very bad. Students apparently suffer from very bad sound levels. But there's no reason that public radio can't have good sound, in my opinion.
And like I've said before Matilda leaves, I'm willing to help people myself.
Okay.
I'm willing to give tutorials, personal tutorials.
And I'm no expert, you know, I didn't go to school and I picked up everything in tutorials and workshops and just experience, you know, it's it takes a lot of experience to get there. Yeah. And, you know, John Nichols, who wrote the Milagro Beanfield War, just died last week. And I was so happy. We recorded him so many times. We've been able to broadcast hours of his talks. Oh, what a beautiful man. What a humorous writer. Oh, and again, that's what public radio, the strength of community radio is recording these people that they die, you know, and that we have this archive of John Nichols. Oh, I'm just so happy that we did that time. We were very good friends, and you know, we've lost a lot of people in our community, and we've recorded them, from Agnes Martin to Jerry Padilla to, I know, it's just amazing some of the stellar people that we've recorded over the years. And that's the value of community radio. So.
Well, you've put forth a very compelling argument, Robin, to move forward on having a unified sound. And I wish Otis was here yet. Maybe he'll still make it. But I was curious to hear from Ursula and John, how practical on your end do you think that could be?
I think that it's definitely something that we should do. I went and looked at audio port while in the last few minutes to see, because I thought Otis had put something up, and Otis is convinced that -16 is the proper standard to use, because some people
Joseph's shaking his head. Keep going.
No. Listen to me. Some people are having problem getting enough level if everything's at -24, and they were complaining about Democracy Now! That they couldn't get the level on their consoles to where it should be, which may just be limited to 1 or 2 affiliates, and maybe they have to put in some type of a line amplifier there. Maybe that's not the solution, but we have to, first of all, come up with what standard we want to use. I think that's really important. We have to have tutorials, and both Joseph and Robin seem really knowledgeable about this, so they know how to to train people. You know, probably make some videos that would be really helpful, so that, and people really need to understand that difference in perceived loudness between one audio file and another is a problem, because you don't want suddenly to jump louder or quieter, because it's a problem, as you said, for the listeners. So
I mean, at least if we could post next to the audio hosting place what the recommended level is. Right now it's -24. That is supposed to be the standard, you know, and like I say, a good half of the programs are within 3 or 4 decibels, that, which, you know, is workable.
Sure.
Even -18 is, you know, our compressor on the mountain can handle that, you know. Yeah.
I want to make a couple of notes. One of them is that the normalization standard was set to -24, as he said. That's why when it rises higher than -24, the limiter kicks in, because it's not supposed to, it really is set for -24. The other thing is there's a difference between stereo and mono. There's actually a 3 dB difference, or 3 loudness units full scale LUFS difference between stereo and mono. They consider mono perceived louder, so it's 3 LUFS below the stereo of -24.
Oh.
That's
we actually broadcast in mono in order to get the Forest Service won't let us broadcast at our license
in stereo
level, and so we broadcast
do everything in mono
mono
myself.
Yeah,
I mean, we're, you know, talk programs. I don't know why you would want to do it in stereo. It takes up more space.
right.
Anyway,
and also there's more problems with multipath. If you're in fringe areas, you'll have a lot more noise in stereo than mono.
This is true.
Back when I was at WBAI in the 1970s, they actually would turn off the stereo beacon for the news, for any shows that didn't have stereo content, because it was cleaner in fringe areas.
And I couldn't imagine why any console can't turn up a -24 normalized audio to make it sound just as loud as anything. I think it's because they're too used to being loud, is my opinion.
Right. I think that's it.
Yeah,
I certainly don't want to bring
So that's
everything
why
down to 16.
That's why I shook my head at -16, because what you're going to do is it's going to go up, and then it's not going to let it, it's going to compress it. It's
Yeah.
going to make it sound louder, like they wanted on YouTube and those places. That's my statement. Sorry.
Well, when I was at KHOI, when we took Democracy Now! Files on and put them on the air, even when we turned our console all the way up, it still wasn't loud enough for the air. So I'm just confused about this because, I mean, we ended up having to make Democracy Now! Louder in order to be able to put it on the air. So I don't know what that means. Because I mean, I watched it happen repeatedly. We couldn't get enough sound out of it, the file, to go on the air with it. So I mean, why was that? I mean, it was a normal console. It wasn't anything special about our console.
We certainly don't have that problem.
I don't think we have that problem, and we do it all automatedly.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm puzzled.
Well, again, almost all radio stations have somewhere between the console and the transmitter some kind of audio processing. And we were lucky when we bought our Nowtel that they gave us a huge discount on this Orban processor, and it has made our sound beautiful. Basically, it's it's like a $3,000 processor, in a $10,000 transmitter. And
Mhm.
so there are processors that can be put in for as little as $400 or $500 between your console and your transmitter that would bring the level up. So that's solvable, but having all these different levels is very frustrating, because again, you really need a board operator there moving the console up and down for each program, and that's a lot of work. Maybe
So
some of the-
Robin, what was that, the audiophonic leveler? Would that help Ursula in that situation that you were talking about?
It would actually, yeah. I mean, basically, you can run any audio file through this leveler, and it not only brings it to us whatever level that you want, -24, -16, whatever the level, because you can create two different files, but it actually analyzes. It's very, very sophisticated. I don't know how it works. Is it analyzes the whole file for about a minute and a half, and then it brings some up and some down. It still keeps, when you're listening to it, it still sounds like the voice goes soft and the voice goes loud. It doesn't make it all the same. I don't know how it does it, but it's a great program. And like I say, there's two different versions. One is online, where you can, for very low cost, you can just do a few hours a month, or you can actually buy the standalone program. We use the standalone program. It's less than $100, I think. So it's very useful,
So
and that's how we've solved this problem of, I was kind of shocked how many programs were actually not, that I didn't realize were so loud. It's like, God, why haven't we been bringing that one down?
So the leveler is software.
Yeah. And again, it does a very intelligent, in other words, if all it did was bring it down, it wouldn't be good enough. It does this analyzation of the voice level so that you hear modulation in the voice, and it sounds just good, and there's no magic bullet. If something's messed up, it's messed up. But
Like you said, if everyone at least aims towards -24, if they're close, like 18, that would go a long ways to
the closer you were to 24, the better our Orban processor would have on making that sound good. Like I said, when I sent you that email 2 weeks ago, Mike was listening to the radio, and it was just distorting like mad. This dialogue news show, it was at -7, and it was terrible.
Usually awful.
It's terrible. And
It's limiting the heck out of it. It's
Yeah.
just making it basically into a square wave.
yeah, yeah. So that really got me upset. I just like, how can people put that out there? And that's why I don't understand this great low power FM in Baton Rouge. They will not bring their levels. They just blast it out, It's
So-
nice music, but
There's
Well,
one other thing I want to mention about the like YouTube and all these other standards. They actually don't care if it's lower than their standard. They don't amplify. They only compress.
oh, really? Yeah.
Yes, if it's above their standard, then they will compress it down to their standard. But if it's below, they don't bring it up.
Hmm.
That's what I understand.
But
I
then it
could-
doesn't sound, I mean, if you're listening on a iPad, then it doesn't sound, that sounds really quiet then, right? If you sent them a -24 for a podcast.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you would be going from one thing to another, and people would again, it's too loud, it's too low. I don't understand.
Okay.
We have a question from Charlie right now.
If you'll forgive maybe a little bit of a naive question here, but I want to take advantage of you all while I have you. Joseph mentioned loudness normalization versus peak normalization. Well, when I put my classical music radio show together, I have my editor do a peak normalization of -2, but I understand, so I'll send that forward to the radio station. And now these other things you're talking about are really out of my hands. That has to do with the audio processing at the radio station and the Orban. Our Orban is actually out at the transmitter. Orban, I think, puts the whole FM signal together, the side
Right.
bands and everything. So am I doing a good thing or a bad thing?
Normalization, when you do normalization, like we use Pro Tools, most people don't, but we do. You can choose peak or RMS. Root means squared, and that looks at the average of whatever. If you select a portion of your audio and you ask it to measure the dB level of that, it looks at the average, not at the peak. And that's what you should really be using. And I would believe that probably whatever software you're using in the editing would allow you to do RMS rather than peak. Isn't that right, Joseph?
Yes, RMS, plugging for Reaper. As you saw, Reaper can do loudness normalization. It doesn't have to do RMS.
Yeah.
RMS is a voltage level as opposed to a perceived sound level. When you're dealing with classical music, and Robin may agree with me, when you're dealing with classical music, I think that you want, because it's as I went last time, classical music has a lot of dynamic range, lots of lows, lots of highs. So you don't want to average that out. You want to use, I would use peak normalization for the music.
Oh, okay.
Because you'd only want to go to the highest peaks, -3 dB below zero. And it's the voice that you want to make sure that it's level. And that's where you use compressors and to get to the loudness level that you want. This is my opinion. That's because
well, we have a wonderful composer. She's just about to turn 90, and she does an hour classical music show every week. I mean, I cannot believe how hard she works at that. And we have very low levels on that classical music because we're taking it right from the CD without any changes, and they're pretty quiet. And in fact, we'll get a warning from our transmitter that, it's too low, basically. So
the interesting thing about the VU on your board for live, according to what I've read, the VU meter is actually very much like the loudness meter, that it mimics the voice. Because if it's an analog meter, I don't like VU meters in digital. If it is an analog meter, the gravity, the spring, the thing. And so when you're live on the air and you play classical music, you make sure the peaks are around 0 VU or 100% modulation. And then when you get to your voice, you're actually doing normalization with your voice. Because you're going and you're watching the VU meter out of your eye, and you're making sure that your voice is peaking at 0 VU. And that's all normalization does, is with each piece, you want to do it if you're doing a remote or recorded, you want to do the music with a different kind of normalization than you want to do with your voice. That's my opinion. Specifically with classical music.
Yeah, and I'm not sure with this audiophonic, it seems to do okay with music because, you know, I mean, like these two programs from Baton Rouge, they have a DJ and he's talking and then they play some music and seems to handle it pretty well, but I'm sure it can't do it as well as what you're talking about.
I have
Well,
a couple. Oh, go ahead, Charlie.
well, I was just wondering, would it be worth, I think it cost about $60 for me to buy Reaper.
Yes.
And then I could use the loudness normalization on my announcing.
Yes.
That might be useful.
And it also does peak normalization too. It does both. It does RMS as well.
Okay.
So
Sorry, I didn't mean to get carried away.
related to that, since I'm doing a Sprouts show and I get like a different episode from someone every week and they're using different kinds of software and stuff, could I put that into something like Reaper and get it closer to where it should be, regardless of who gave it to me or what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Or audiophonic also would do the same thing, yeah.
Or audiophonic. Okay.
Well,
And go ahead.
I just was looking up audiophonics. Also does some other things. It does some noise reduction and hums. I was just looking at that.
That's helpful. It actually does a good job of that. Yeah.
And a thing like a Tascam recorder, do those have a setting for loudness for?
No, that would be a
Well-
peak meter. I'm sorry.
Well, the Tascam recorder we use is a D70, which is and it has four
you froze for a second,
XLR
Robin. Can you
inputs
repeat that?
and stereo input, 1/8-inch stereo inputs. It's about a $300 recorder. You control the level of each track that you're recording, and you have a meter on the display that shows the level. And, you know, we try to get, you know, when we're setting it up or testing out the mics, get it so that it's right in the middle of,
Negative 12 dB.
you know, so it's not going to flip on one end. Yeah.
Pretty much
yeah.
what you're trying to do with a peak meter in that
Yeah.
situation is negative 12 dB
Okay.
peaks.
And the nice thing about that Tascam D70 is it's the levels are rheostats. They're not an electronic thing that says
yes,
mine is
that's a
this,
good
you know. It's so much better. It's a great recorder, yeah. For some reason, Tascam doesn't promote it very much. I don't quite understand why.
The reason you
The
want
other one
negative-
is sound. What's the other great sound devices is another great recording setup. It's quite a bit more expensive. Yeah, but
the Sony too. I like the Sony as well.
yeah.
But the reason you want to do negative 12 is because you want that room to bring the levels up if you need to.
Yeah. And the Tascam has a very good preamp, you know, even if we get a really low level, we can bring it up and you don't hear any distortion or, you know, it's a great recorder. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
More questions?
Does
More
anyone else have any
ideas?
questions? Yeah.
Well, you know, Robin, you were asking earlier why you don't understand why people don't make better sound. And I think I can speak for some of those people, which is that we just don't have the training for it. I kind of showing my ignorance here, but I think I'm speaking for a lot of people's situation. I don't know how to set those levels that you're describing. And so it seems like it would be, you know, a good roundtable to do in the future, Stephanie, where it's actually shown on a few different types of software.
See, part of the problem is that people use so many different editing software. You know, there's like at least 10 different major editing software that people use in public radio. And so it's very hard for me.
I do know that a lot of people we deal with use Audacity because of the cost. And, you know, that's kind of like a bottom line.
We're not hearing you.
software.
Well, if you go to the Tascam in the transom.org site, it goes through about 5 different editing programs and shows you where you can do the leveling. So that, you just have to find your program that you use and see what, we had someone that does a 3-minute meditation, and she kept getting these really low levels. She was like at minus 35 or something. She was really low. And I finally I don't use her editing software, but I finally got her to find in the editing program where she can get it. Now she's outputting it around minus 24. It's great.
So there's another plugin for digital audio.
So, you just have to look in your instructions for your editing software where you can control those levels, because every program has that in some form or another. Some are better than others,
There's a plugin called Ulean.
Oh yeah, that's a great one, I've heard.
Yes, it's both a plugin and standalone, and there's a free version and a unfree version, and that can give you levels both on the run, on the fly, and
How do you spell Yulean, Joseph?
Youlean.
Youlean.
Like in Yulean.
Got it. So that it's a plugin, so that means it's adaptable to different editing
Yes, it is.
things, is what you're saying.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
So I'm looking here in Transom. I think there's some other.
But that's the nice
software.
thing about Reaper. Once again, they should pay me because I love Reaper. Anyway,
I
is that
know.
they way back when, and start like in 6.5 or something like that, they built in loudness meters. So you can switch your master meter to loudness, and you can switch your track meters to loudness. So you can get both intermediate and short term as well as integrated. So when I do everything in loudness. I don't do anything in peak.
Yeah, a couple other companies are Waves WLM Plus is another plugin. Nugent Vis LM, another one. Isotopes Insight.
Oh yes, Isotope, but that's
So-
like a $300 program. So
Right, yeah. Some of these
So-
are expensive, yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Are you more in favor of using limiting rather than compression to bring things into the range that you need for LUFS?
I can answer that if you want me to.
Go ahead, Joseph. I
Thank
don't
you.
really know the answer, yeah.
I prefer compression because you can set the limiting is just like what they call it. It's a brick wall. When it hits that wall, it just pushes it down.
Right.
With compression, with dynamic range compression, you can gently push it down.
Right.
Yes, if I have to, I would rather use compression.
Right. That answers my question. Thanks.
In the normalization standard, they use a brick wall limiter.
It would be nice to at least work with the 5 Pacifica stations and have some kind of standard for those stations of what they put out, because they don't have one, for the most part. I mean, the programs that have been around for a while are at around minus 24, but a lot of the newer programs, they're really loud. Yeah, so.
Well, I would really like to put a section about this into the audio port resource pages on our website. I just really feel like we need the support of somebody who is an engineer who understands audio.
I wish we could get Jeff Town to come in. I don't know him, but
I don't know Jeff Town.
Jeff Town is from this transom.org, and he's written a lot of these tutorials.
Yeah.
And he did this. I heard him on PRX. I have to find that program. I have such a hard time finding things on PRX for some reason, but he did a whole program for PRX on these kinds of issues. And if we
And
could
I'm
get
always willing to
him,
help where I can.
yeah, it sounds like
Well,
Joseph's a
that
little
would be
more
great.
knowledgeable
I
than
mean,
me. I
yeah,
just
I mean-
learned by doing, so.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, Robin sent me the link to the article, but I can guarantee that nobody's going to read that. It's just, that's just not how this works. And so we need to have some sort of summary, statement to get people started, to help them kind of sort it out in their head. And I really think we should have it. I just am not qualified really to do it adequately. And it would be good to be able to make recommendations about all these different software that can be helpful in this. So, any volunteers here, I'll take, because I think we should have something. I just don't think we have the capacity here to do it properly.
I would gladly
and-
help. Go ahead, sorry.
Help, Joseph? Okay.
And both MPR and PRX have tutorials, they're not as detailed as transom.org is, but they give you an overview. You might be able to,
Where would you find those, Robin?
well, I just did some Googling, like this is trainingnpr.org, and it has mixing, loudness, and
Mhm.
and again, PRX, they have standards that they pretty much enforce for what you post on PRX.
Mhm.
So
I just would need help with the writing. I'm not a very good writer.
Well, it's
Writing I can
hard.
do.
it's
That's
hard
not
to
a
write.
problem. I just don't have the, understanding for it. But I mean, John, is it
Yes.
is it really an option to set it up so that AudioPort wouldn't accept audio above a certain level?
That's an Otis question,
Mm,
because you would have to do some type of Fourier analysis,
yeah.
probably to look at it. I don't know if you can look at just the numbers and just kind of crunch the numbers in the audio file. It's possible. Otis would probably know, but again, we got to come up with a standard. And if -24 is the standard, then we have to have that posted. And again, now, Robin, the tutorial on PRX, you have to log in to be able to view the tutorial, right?
Well, no, I don't think so. And there's very inexpensive ways to be part of PRX without, paying a lot, so
Would it be okay to link to that video or to
let me find it again. I don't have it right in front of me, but I
Sure.
did see one on PRX, and again, there was one on NPR too, basically, and basically cover it was more general than the transom one. And
Right.
again, NPR pretty much controls it, so they just want you to understand what they're trying to get at.
Sure.
PRX is a little more, and Content Depot is a little more wanting you to get it right before you post to those places, so.
Well, unfortunately,
And right at that time, Otis is coming in. I'm sorry, what were you saying,
I
Joseph?
have to go. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's fine. Thank you so much for your contribution. This is hearing you and Robin talk together has been
He does a
real
good job.
valuable.
You did a good job, Robin.
Yeah.
I'm just a technical guy.
I'm just
Well, we
a
have to run a
technical
radio
guy.
station. We have to run a radio station 24/7, and it's, you have to
Mhm.
you have to watch
So,
these things.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay,
Thank you,
bye.
Joseph.
So much,
Thank you,
Joseph.
Joseph.
Bye.
Otis, you came just at the right time. We're trying to figure out, we've been talking about the standard of possibly doing a -24 for audio port, and is that possible to program into that people will have to do that to be able to get their show up?
I'm not sure what you're asking. There's no way to do it automatically. There's no way to correct people's uploads that I know of. I would never even want to do that. If that's what you're saying, I don't see that.
Would it be very time consuming? Yeah, it'd be just,
Yeah, and it's different. The content makes a difference in how you do it and stuff like that. What has to happen is something like, well, we need a posse of agreement that will spread the word and tell people how to do it. Because I mean, we can make the assumption that people would like to know, maybe, that, you know, it's not really rocket science. It's a
No.
different way you look at how you do it. The only question I have is why minus 24 is, Robin, is that because that's the
Well, it's already the standard for
satellite
almost all NPR stations.
Yeah, no, it is the
And a
satellite.
lot of programs are distributed both to Pacifica and PR. PRX has the same standard.
Okay.
You know, so
that's the answer.
it's a European standard, it's a television standard.
No, you don't have to sell me. You just say that's it. Okay, I got it. Now I know. So,
and like I say, I would like to just, like I said, I spent an hour this morning and I went through almost 80 programs that we regularly download, and I ran them through NPR's analyzing tool they have that will give you the LUSF, and half of them were just totally off, you know.
Yeah.
And if we could just let those people know, you know, don't you think you might want to get this a little closer? I mean, it's one thing to be, you know, minus 18, but minus 7, minus 13.
But are they thinking that, or are they thinking peaks? Because the training of most everybody has to do with peaks, you know, not with perceived loudness. And so that is a huge change in the way you master, or, you know, what you do.
Well, except this standard has been around for almost 15 years, almost, you know, so.
Well, that's interesting because it sounds like that's like Ursula was saying, like people aren't trained maybe like they used to be, like she wasn't aware of, I wasn't aware of.
Right. Because
again, this is a deficiency that we need to address in the Pacifica affiliate network, is just raising everybody's standards of quality, because we're a great network. We have amazing content, and we ought to be able to just bring up some of the other standards along with it, you know. And I think the future of Pacifica is in the Pacifica affiliate network. I just firmly believe in that. And the more that we can help the affiliates get their quality up better, and it's also the independent producers. See, what I'd like, you know, Stephanie, for you to put together a list of all these independent producers, because we have a lot of independent producers on Audioport. They're not connected with a radio station at all.
It's true.
And they're producing great content, but they also are not aware of a lot of these things, you know.
It's true.
Well, but one of the characteristics of Pacifica, and one of the things about Audioport and this whole affiliates program, has to do with not being forced to behave a certain way. And I mean, that's part of the you know. And so what we have to do is essentially sell them on the idea of, well, it's really kind of cool to be technically correct. You know, it doesn't really hurt you. It might be a nice thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I'm saying we have to communicate. I think I was talking to Stephanie, if we could send some shit out on Pacifica Announce. The thing we don't have is that Pacifica Announce, it just goes to tech. And, you know, who knows who it goes to. And
we know who it goes to.
No, but I'm saying, would we be reaching the people who know something about this, or who have any interest in this? We deal with a lot of artists who don't really have an interest in the technical side, because they're artists, and they don't need to know that. And so we have to kind of work on that. And all I'm saying, bottom line, what I'm saying is, I don't think you can make it happen, but you could certainly induce it. You know, we could certainly, you know.
I think a short tutorial that's, you know, 1 page that gives you the basics would definitely help a lot. And again, we're throwing away the value of FM radio. FM radio became popular because of how good it produced sound. That you could play symphonies on a beautiful stereo system and feel like you were in a concert hall, you know?
We're not at whether or not, we're at how is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Otis is right. I mean, you know, you've made a very compelling argument, Robin. I'm just looking for ideas from you guys about when you say we should, you know, educate people. what do you think is the effective way to do that?
I want Robin.
I mean, we
He
don't
said we should
have
have
a
he said-
magic control over everybody in the network, so. what
Robin
is
said
the-
he wanted to do a
Yeah.
one-page thing, so do it. Write up a
Okay.
one-page thing that's charming.
Okay, well, I'll try.
And,
Okay, thank you.
and then we'll fix it so that it's charming.
Okay.
And make this a thing that people are suddenly, hey, have you done your LUFS yet? You know, and stuff like that, you know, and make this the meme of the, but I know it sounds silly, but I'm really kind of serious that suddenly people are saying, well, oh, we want to make it sound better. We could do that.
Yeah, we could frame it as like next level or something, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you should, you know, kind of mention that the problem that you've raised with me, that I've done nothing about this, you know, and we've been talking about it for a year or more, of what you have to go through in order to get this, you know, to get the levels going out of the station, going out over the air reasonable. And how many calls have we had from people saying that Amy is way, way down?
Yeah, a lot.
And that is
I mean,
because
that's the
she's
problem.
doing
It's-
hers at -24.
Right.
She's following the
And a lot of other it's not just Amy. I mean, Ian Masters is at -24, the broadcast at -24. I
Oh, is
mean,
he?
most of the larger established programs have
Yeah.
Sonali's at -24. I mean, or within 3 decibels of that, you know, basically. So people are able to do it. We certainly don't want to, again, a lot of these programs that are at -24 are distributed different places to different radio stations, you know, besides Pacifica. So we don't want to have them wreck what they're doing right already, you know.
You know,
We
that
just
could
have
be
to
like
educate people, yeah.
It's a
That-
problem with the radio stations as well, though, because like, for instance, my experience at KHOI, I don't know why it is the way it is there. And I know, I mean, I've seen the board. I know that we're not, you know, we're going as high as we can. So somehow radio stations are also adjusted to higher volumes. So
Well,
we have to-
I mean, we have the same problem with radio engineering in community radio. They don't, I mean, for example, KRZA in Alamosa, they don't have an engineer. They just don't. And they have had just problems and problems with their transmitter and overheating because they don't hire an engineer. And, you know, it's a problem with underfunded stations that think that they don't have to address these things. I'm sure KOHI, all they need is something between their console and their transmitter, and they would have no problem with Amy. It's, you know, like I say, it's probably a $500 solution that they could do, and it would address all those other programs that they could be
Well-
playing that are at -24, you know, so.
That's
Theory.
probably true, but somebody has to explain. I mean,
Right.
the knowledge,
That might be part of what will
the
be
knowledge might
explained.
not
Right.
be there to do it. And if, you know, if we do create a different standard, then somehow you have to help stations deal with that.
Well,
Right.
Well, the standard has been -24 for a long time. We're not creating a different standard. We're trying
What
to
he-
address is that
Pacifica.
some people apparently think that -24 is too low. Well, they've got to have, we have to bring in a radio engineer like Mike Brown or, you know, and explain what you have to do to get it so that that's not a problem. Because we never
but-
had a problem with that.
if the thing is, if everybody was at -24, this would not be an issue.
They'd have
I
to address it.
understand that. I mean, I'm not stupid. I get that. But you know, our job here at our office is to make things at the network work. And so it gets down to how do you actually make that I mean, I
Right.
get.
Well, let me
that.
talk
You have to
to,
help people get there.
we're
because-
not using Mike Brown anymore, but I have another engineer and I'll call him and say, look, how could we explain some of the stations in the Pacific Affiliate network have a problem with the -24 radio standard?
Yeah,
What do they have to do to address that?
yeah.
What piece of
Yeah.
equipment that they need to buy?
Yeah,
And as I say, in doing this series, there's a piece of software that runs it'll run on a very cheap Dell or whatever for $400. It'll bring it up to whatever level you want. You know,
Well, theoretically, Optimod is supposed to do that. But
Yeah,
the question that I have is that the reason -24 is a problem is because they're getting stuff that's at -1.
right.
And so if you get all that, I mean, that's why I say, if that goes away, then, you know, they just crank up the level and they're home, because everything else, the problem you've had is the stuff's coming on in at all different levels, and you can't be there to do this, you know.
Right, right.
And it's like, well, we should be supplying it that way, and that's what we have to sell. Be nice to the station that's carrying your hard work.
Right.
Don't punish them for carrying your show.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, those instances where people are having trouble with democracy now being too low could really be an opportunity for us to start that conversation with them. If, like Ursula says, we have the resources and the people that we can connect them with to really have the answers.
Well,
There definitely is answers to that problem.
the answer is to get everybody down to -24. If it's
Well, no, they obviously.
But we have to be able to tell them how.
Shortfalls. I mean, in other words, someone, whoever put that radio station together, left out an important piece. Like I say, our Orban processor addresses that. You know?
Yeah.
And luckily, when we bought our Nowtel, they had a sale on the Orban processor, and we've never had a problem with it, basically. You know, so.
Well, I don't know. I think KHOI has an Optimod or something.
Okay.
Almost
well,
everybody has something like that. I mean, at the very least, you can use a compeller. You know, I mean, anyway.
But we have to find out with those particular stations that are complaining about -24. What is the problem? You know.
Well, but one of the things to do is to get people to conform to that -24, and it seems to me that's what this was about, and that's what selling the people who supply the programming and audio port in other places.
And Robin was saying earlier, you know, even if it's not exactly -24, if you can get to like -18, it's still going to sound better.
No,
And -7.
Yeah.
Sure.
It really, it's fairly forgiving because of what's actually going on, the way it actually works. It's not like you know, you get this much, you have a fair amount of headroom.
And of course, people can turn their volume on their radio up and down. They do. But as Joe was saying, that I mean, there's been studies that show if it's too much that they have to turn it, they switch to another station. You know, so we don't have that happening.
That's right. Joseph was saying that.
Our responsibility is to feed it to the listeners in a way that's, you know, consumable easily.
Yeah. Well, let me see if I can write a one-page thing, and let me call my engineer and see if he can come up with some kind of generic solution to these stations that are finding -24 too low.
Well,
because I'm sure there's a solution for that.
When we hear the thing that we have to sell, -24 sounds soft if you're thinking peak.
Well, it's -24 LUSF. You've got to understand what LUSF
right, exactly.
is.
That's what I'm saying. And the issue here is the difference between peak, measuring the peaks, and measuring the loudness that you hear, which is a
perceived
totally
loudness,
thing.
right? Yeah.
And so that's what we have to get people to look at, and you know, because that's the difference. Obviously, we look at the peak. We don't want to see peaks going way up, but they're -24 has peaks that are well above -24.
Right.
Anyway.
And again, the LUS standard has their standard for how much peak and how low you can go. It's not just the average that it addresses, you know. So and again, with television, you can actually be fined by the FCC if you don't stay at -24.
Right.
They haven't done that with radio, but in television, Congress passed a law in 2010 that said you can be fined by the FCC for not keeping your levels even.
It was about commercials that blasted out.
Right.
Because the peak was the same, but they had compressed it so it sounded louder.
And that's the thing. Different, you know, a bass at a certain level sounds totally different than a treble at a different level. It's it's perceived loudness. And that's, a lot of people don't understand that perceived loudness is different than just peak or decibels.
Well, I think that's, you got to sell that.
Yeah.
You want to sell that and say this makes your show more listenable.
Right.
Yeah, Ursula and I just have been working on our audio port resource center, and it sounds like this could be its own whole section.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The standards for uploading to audio port. Yeah, you can upload crap, but you could also upload good stuff. You know, I don't know.
Well, Joseph, I really, Joseph Orozco, I really appreciate the offer you just made. I mean, in reality, Joseph just offered to have the Association of Affiliates try and help with this. I mean, the only way that we can really make any change happen is a massive campaign.
Yes.
That will get down to one-on-one conversations with every station and as many people in audio port as we humanly can do.
But it has to be, this is the fun thing to do. This is a thing that works, and it's not just you have to do this, otherwise, you know. I mean,
No, it's to improve the quality. Let's make everything better on the affiliate network. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know what you mean. I don't know how you define fun, but it's we're talking about something extremely time consuming. And
no, it's not. It's not time consuming.
Yes, it is. So, Joseph, thank you for,
what is time consuming?
Suggesting it would be great.
Well, to contact, see, the part of the problem is that, most program directors, for example, they're so busy that they don't have time to even talk to you.
Well, we're talking about producers
Well,
to that standard, mastering it to that standard before they upload it. They're uploading a recording.
But I mean, program directors have some say over what's produced at their station,
Over what
they could communicate with their producers, basically. So
what is produced, what this is a change in how.
You guys are all welcome to join my staff, and
it's a very simple, it's actually a very simple how that I know that I use Reaper. And I've been told that Audacity will do the same thing.
Hindenburg will do the same thing.
There are tools,
Pro Tools will do the same thing.
Right? I mean, if you're going to use Hindenburg, or
Audiophonic,
or Pro Tools, they all have the tools to do that. And once you get it, that idea of perceived loudness, it's you push a button.
It's automatic,
I know that Reaper now, when you and they just put it in a year ago, when you render, it tells you what your LUFS are, all three, and it gives you your peak and all that stuff is there, and it even has a web page. You could push a button and go to a web page with this big analysis of of the thing you've done. So I don't have to do anything. I know how I could set the stuff and it works, so I get -24 if I want it. I'm doing stupid stuff at -13 though. Anyway.
Okay,
so it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Joseph doesn't have to persuade people, it's like, here's the thing.
You've got to get people to at least read what we've written.
Otis, you don't know what you're talking about. With all due respect,
well,
you're a great coder, but you know nothing about organizing people, because that statement just is not true.
Which one?
There's nothing to getting people to do it. It's
Oh no, I meant there was once you do it, you could do it. I don't mean.
Oh yeah.
Changing people's habit is immense. I'm aware of that fact. That's why I'm trying to be glib so that you don't ask me to do it.
Okay.
Well, this was great, you guys. Wow. This was an awesome conversation.
Robin's going to write a paper. He's going to start this whole thing off by writing a paper, and Joseph's
the plan.
We got a first step to do, and we can start building this. It is a big project, but it's also it sounds exciting that we could get our sound much better.
I would like us to sort of believe out in the universe that this is not going to be a hard sell. We're not going to have a whole lot of resistance from people saying, I don't want to do that. I've been doing it this way for years,
Otis, we can't even get people.
What? You're muted, Joseph. Pretty
We
sure.
can't even get people to what?
Follow
There
the
are people who
FCC
do that.
regulations.
I know, and of course we're going to have them, and we will make a brilliant example of them, and everybody will poke fun at them. No, but what I'm saying is, yes, we get that initial resistance from people. Some people will say, "Hey, it sounds better." I mean, there are people who will say, "Oh, that's interesting to do it that way. Let me think about that." You may say, "Oh, a new toy." I mean, I think that a lot of
Right.
people may respond positively and say, "Thank you for telling me about this." That's what I said.
Yeah, that's what Robin and Joseph were kind of talking about earlier, is how you frame it. If we frame it as like, this is the next level. If you really want to make it pristine sound, do this.
Yeah,
And again, on AudioPort, people put things up and a lot of shows don't get picked up.
right.
And
Yeah.
this would be another selling point. You want your show to be picked up, get your sound quality up, maybe more
Is that
stations
something
will-
that we could mark on a show as, they could advertise it as part of their show? Is this show is at -24?
There are a couple shows that we carry that say that right in their description. This is
Yeah.
-24. They're proud of it.
Yeah.
We give them the AudioPort stamp of approval.
Yeah, it would be like the little
It'll be
little
like
label like you would have in a grocery store, like
or like
little
on Twitter, the little blue check mark.
-24, little smiley face.
There was
Yeah.
when Wagner first came out. This was in Audio Magazine years ago. And Wagner, when he first came out with the opera, I mean, it was a huge change in music because he was doing stuff that with trumpets that nobody else ever did. And one of the cartoons that went out by the critics showed a guy standing in a huge ear with a hammer and chisel to open up the ear for Wagner, right? Some kind of ear. Anyway,
What?
we need a graphic. We need a graphic.
Yeah, I kind of really agree. I really think we could. I think we should.
Anyway,
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Robin,
Okay.
so much. And thank
Yeah,
you,
Robin.
Otis. And thank you, John. John, do you have anything you want to add before we go?
Not really.
Okay.
I just think that it's going to be training people, like you said, to use it, and training the students, the stations to use something that they consider to be too soft, and which isn't really too soft,
that
but
doesn't sound so.
to change their perception of how to deal with it. So
Okay. Yeah.
okay.
Robin's
gonna
Well,
take
like I
work.
say, I'll try to get an engineer to suggest solutions to that, but there must be fairly simple
Okay.
solutions.
I think
Thank you, Robin.
explain the idea of perceived sound. 24. Trying to think what 24 is. 30. What's traffic in New York is 60. Something like that. And there are those comparisons that people make. Anyway.
Okay, well, I'm going to go here now. So,
Okay, Robin. So we're going to count on you to get us started and we'll go from there.
okay,
Thank you.
great.
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much.
Very
Thank
good.
you,
Okay, bye.
everybody.
Later.
Thank you, Urban, for coming.
Okay. Good luck, Joseph.
Everyone stay safe.